Um, Welcome to today's meeting of the Technical Advisory Council of the Confidential Computing Consortium. We'll dispense with this business as quickly as I'm able. This is just a slide to make sure that everybody understands that this is an open and very welcoming group, community focused on open source licensed projects including data in use and accelerating the adoption of confidential computing. Everyone is welcome. Every project is welcome. And anybody who wants to speak up and make their voice heard, all you have to do is come off mute and interrupt yourselves. This is the antitrust policy. I am not a lawyer, but essentially what this means is that the people who are participating in this technical advisory committee are bound by all U.S. Laws that prevent uh, collusion among the members. And now we're getting to the agenda. You've already heard the welcome. Hopefully, Ben, you can help me with the roll call, but I can go through and try and figure it out. But I'll just go through that and go straight to, I don't think we've got any votes today, so I'll skip the roll call. But I would like to take a moment here to encourage any first time or second time attendees who haven't introduced themselves to the TAC at least twice to come off mute and give us a hello and good day and share your names and any background story you care to share with us.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Powell. I'm a security architect at AMD, and I work quite a bit with confidential computing.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming off mute, Jeremy. Look forward to working with you. Um, have you worked with other colleagues at AMD? I know we have some
Yes.
active participation. All right, awesome.
Yeah, Nathaniel is kind of in the same area.
Wonderful. Well, Nathaniel's an old friend, so any friend of Nathaniel's is a friend of ours.
Cool.
Anybody else want to come off mute and say hello?
Hi, I'm Don Porter. I'm a professor at UNC Chapel Hill. I've worked in confidential computing for a while. I'm here with the Gramming Project, which will be presenting our annual review later. It's not my first or second time, but when you only drop in once a year, so probably merits a reminder.
Well, welcome back, Don. We look forward to hearing the review from Grameen. Thanks for joining. Anybody else?
Hello everyone, this is Kai Lunqing from Intel. I work in the confidential computing team at Intel. Yeah, I'm also one of the Grammy maintainers.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Kaylin. We look forward to hearing the update. Does anybody else want to come off mute and say hello? Okay, well, if not, we'll move to the next slide. Old business. Again, we'll skip over this. Ben, I don't know if you need to capture this or can I just move past it or should I try and check to see who's here?
That's all right. I've got the participant list, so I've already done this. So you can move forward.
Awesome.
That's five, so you're good.
Great. Okay, well, just wanted to say welcome to the new community members who just came off mute. I guess I got ahead of myself. Here's the slide where I was supposed to have done that. We'll skip past this. Old business. Gosh, I thought I'd updated this slide, but I guess not. We'll skip past this and go straight into the first order of business. I thought I had the agenda items. Let me just go
I
past
believe
this.
I am the first one today, actually, not Grameen.
Yeah. Well, I apologize. I don't know what happened to those slides. I thought I had them worked out, but it looks like we've got an old version. So you're right, Mark. And I want you to talk about the, um, let's see, replicated, and this is from memory, so you can help me out here, but this is replicated workload identity, if I'm not
Correct.
mistaken.
Yeah, it's a trustworthy workload identity for replicator workloads.
Awesome. So I'm hoping you've got some info to share. I did read through the
I
document
do.
that
I
you
just
shared
need
via
you to
email.
stop sharing so I can.
Cool.
All right, so just give me a second here. I'll bring up the application that I'm sharing and I'm switch into slide mode. All right, can you please confirm that you can see the title screen?
I can.
I can.
Yep, now it's here.
You can. Okay. All right. So I have a short presentation followed by discussion. And because it is short and because I'm not going into too many details here, again, for brevity reasons, I ask that you hold your questions until the very end. Unless it's something like super urgent and you like feel completely stuck and you cannot proceed without, raising something. So then in that case, please let me know. So I chair the Trustworthy Workload Identity SIG at the consortium. We've been working on something for a while, and I am bringing the latest result to you because, for reasons I will explain, we now want other members outside of our special interest group to chime in. This is the time when we need some feedback. So, all right. So there is some background I share in the mailing list. And again, for brevity reasons, I'm not going to go over it here, but we have a charter in our special interest group that describes what it is that we're after. We have a fairly good formal set of definitions that we keep current, and we have a very good set of requirements that, again, define what it is that we're actually trying to accomplish. And there was a realization that we had fairly early on, which really led to the creation of this group, is that we're kind of flipping what confidential computing does on its head. In that, we can basically say, look, if a workload can protect its credentials and use, so if you can assure someone that the credentials presented to you are really coming from that workload instance and no other, and of course, that requires the credentials being bound to the workload, so no bearer tokens. We're not discussing anything about bearer tokens in this presentation. Then, by extension, of course, it can protect all the other data that's entrusted to it. And I think it's actually a very fundamental change to how confidential computing is perceived, or by most. Like we've been historically focused really on data in use protection and never really thought about the credentials aspect of it. So we're looking at data in use protection again from that SIG perspective. I'm sure there are plenty of scenarios where that doesn't apply. So this is not something we're trying to change the world. But from our perspective here, is data in use protection is a very nice additional benefit of being able to also trust the identity of the confidential workload. And then there is a full proposal at this hyperlink. Again, I shared both the link to the Google Doc. If you don't have access, I'll give you access, and the PDF. We prefer that if you want to comment that you use the Google Doc, but if you just simply want to read it, there is a PDF that was emailed to the TAC. All right, so I'm going to briefly go over the business case because, again, confidential computing does many things for different people. And if you're not in this business case, then probably this proposal doesn't really apply to you and you can continue doing everything like you always have. But the business case notices the following fact. When we exchange data in enterprises, it's almost exclusively between pairs of workloads. And it's very actually rare that a pair of human eyes looks at it. So we are looking at workload identity as the absolute linchpin for achieving identity-based zero trust. So again, the business case is there is an enterprise, and the enterprise already has workload identity broadly deployed. So legacy workload identity with something like SPIFFE, but our proposal is not limited to SPIFFE. It's just a very good example of what can be done. And then the enterprise decides to gradually roll out confidential computing. And again, an enterprise can be like my employer, JP Morgan Chase, has multiple lines of business, tens of thousands of employees, or like actually a couple 100,000 of employees, and many partners. You're not going to flip a switch and roll out confidential computing. You're going to do it in piecemeal here and there in order priority. But again, we're not, but like high risk locations maybe first, maybe there are some regulations that demand it. But here's the third bullet is key. The proposal we are putting in front of you here will ensure that you can, in that environment, so again, ubiquitously deployed workload identity with bound credentials, which, yeah, that's actually an ambitious starting point, but let's say we get there. We can now take any workload and we can move it into a trusted execution environment with no or very minor code changes. But the very key property here is the clients and servers of that workload do not know or care that this has happened, right? So we're just using industry standard bound credentials, workload identity tokens, X509 certificates, and much like your client or server, so whoever authenticates your workload or authenticates to your workload, or if your workload is a client of another server, then those entities outside of you are completely unaffected. This is a very key deployment consideration. So again, that's what we're after here. So how did we get here? First of all, so a little bit of history. The TriSig has existed now for about a year and a half, couple of years. We made our first foray into IETF a couple of years ago. We came and basically said, look, we have a set of mechanisms that will furnish workload with identities. We presented that at the Madrid IETF last summer, and the feedback was, your proposal is far too big. We basically said, well, these are 4 different topologies where you can deploy confidential computing depending on multiple different workflows. And they said, well, why don't you, for something to become an RFC and something be seriously considered by IETF, it needs to be very tightly scoped to something. So then what we did was we said, okay, let's find a big, impactful, digestible piece. And we settled on what I call replica workloads, or from this point on, I'm just going to call them replicants for fun. But replica workloads are effectively indistinguishable from the point of view of their clients and servers. If there are multiple of them, so containers, serverless functions, horizontally scaling VMs, you actually don't care which particular instance of the workload you are talking to, only that it is functionally indistinguishable for purposes of authentication and authorization. And that may involve things like, this is my payroll app, but also my payroll app is running in this data center in Germany. Like it could have additional attributes, but it's still indistinguishable. So, payroll app in Germany may be different from payroll app in Bangalore. So those would be different, but replicas are like functionally indistinguishable, which means that they can share the exact same credential and the exact same crypto material. And that makes it a lot easier to do certain things if you make that assumption. Again, this is a subset of all workloads, but it's a very, very large subset of the workloads. And when we deal with cloud computing on premise or public cloud, that is covers virtually everything, actually. All right. So the reason this proposal is here is we now need to take it to Vienna IETF in July, and it needs to be an informational draft. And when I talk to IETF people about this, who are very helpful in saying, yes, bring this, and this is a good idea, but in the room you need friendlies. You need people who look at it and say, this is a good idea, we support it. And without it, it kind of dies on the vine. So the purpose of this presentation really is to show you high level what it is we're after and outline our goals. We're not married to this proposal. If you have a better idea, please bring it ahead. The goal is to make confidential computing zero trust identity of workloads deployable at scale. We're proposing a way of doing it, but there may be other ways, other ideas we haven't considered. So this is another part of this discussion. So that's what we want. We want review support, help achieve implementation, and ultimately help drive adoption. What we're not doing today, I'm not going through very fine-tooth combed on this proposal. Again, you can read it, and we will not have time, frankly, to go over everything, but we made as detailed an explanation as we could. And also, there are some deployment and manageability concerns that I want to deep dive on. I'm bringing that to the attestation SIG next Tuesday, so please join us for that discussion. All right, so with that, this is the preamble. Now let's dive in. Let's talk about the layering diagram of what we're trying to do. So at the bottom, there is RATS. And the RATS defines the building blocks, data formats, CBOR, quorum, things like, we have evidence, we have appraisal for policy, we have this passport model, we have the background check model. All these things are defined by RATS. You can read 9334 RFC. It's all in there. Not changing, because again, we want to make as little a splash as possible. Otherwise, things become very, very difficult. On the other side of the spectrum is how credentials are used. So WIMSI is an example. So WIMSI is another IETF working group called the Workload Identity for Multi-System Environments. And they talk primarily about how credentials are used, how they go through proxies, how workloads talk about it, and the different use cases, how they're played for AI, all sorts of things. And we're really not changing it. The reason I put an asterisk on it is I had to work with them to really put something in their reference architecture that wasn't there before, and it was causing a compatibility issue with confidential computing, which again, I can go into, but they have recently decided, okay, we're going to separate credential bootstrapping from credential usage. We're going to focus on credential usage, and credential bootstrapping is now, a short section in the reference architecture saying, well, you can do it in a myriad ways that we're not really dictating. That is a good result from our perspective. They're staying out of credential bootstrapping. Credential bootstrapping has to go somewhere. And that is where my proposal, or this proposal, or our proposal is going. So there is the credential provisioning. This is before the workload starts. So credential is created. Again, it's going to be shared between all the instances, so it needs to be provisioned first. And then there is credential acquisition, and that's what every workload instance does, every replicant does, to be able to actually acquire and be able to use this provisioned workload. Turns out, from the standards sort of perspective, from where something like this would live, kind of a no man's land. No one claims it, or at least no one I know claims it. And it falls closer to RATS because, again, WIMSI wants to move out of the credential bootstrapping business. So we are looking to present an informational RFC to RATS, but also check the bottom row. We're actually not seeking to change RATS. We just want to present to RATS a proposal for how it can be used to achieve this goal. And again, the shape of the RFC is still going to be decided. But I want to focus on the middle part. And now we're really going deep into it. So the proposal summary is we have step-by-step descriptions of the provisioning and acquisition flows. It's all in the document. We also went through and had a very deep dive on the threat model and security considerations to make sure, and I've been in security long enough to know that we probably missed something, so please review. But we did our level best to make sure that we're not overlooking some subtle detail that would derail everything. And again, because we cannot make a splash and be successful, we're aiming for 100% compatibility with existing reference architecture. Okay, so the first step is provisioning. So nothing exists except some workload owner decides that they would like to endow some workloads with identity. Again, not going too deeply into this here, but there are three sections here. There is a first part in maroon, the second part in dark blue, and a third part in green. The first part is the workload owner determines a couple of things. So again, the workload hasn't started yet, but presumably has been built, and we know what it is and where it's going to run. But it knows what identifier future replicants are going to have. Some identifiers assigned to it, pre-assigned to it, and what attestation results would be required for the replicants to acquire the credentials. Okay. So attestation results need to be predicted. That's part of the deep dive on Tuesday. The second thing is number cryptographic keys are created. That's the middle part of the proposal, and they're stored in a key store, an HSM or something equivalent. And the cryptographic material is effectively has an access control policy on it such that only if a replicant has present the valid remote attestation results, or attestation results, then it would be able to retrieve the necessary cryptographic material. And lastly, the credentials are created, so such like an X509 certificate. Credentials in our proposal as the public part, and the secret key, the credential signing key, is the private part. And it's basically at the very last step there on the bottom. Every replicant, before it even starts, is basically provisioned with a credential and a wrapped signing key, which it would be able to then, once it starts, go to the next phase. So the next phase is the credential acquisition key, the credential acquisition phase. So again, there's a swimlane diagram, and at the very top left is effectively what the last diagram ended with, is the workload owner provisions the workload with a plain text credential and a wrapped credential signing key. And so again, that's the first part. The second part is how the credential is acquired. And the third part is how the second part is the remote attestation part. And the third part is using the results of remote attestation to actually acquire the unwrapped plain text credential signing key inside the workload's trust execution environment. So again, the replicant starts. At that point, already has the public credential or way to retrieve it, but does not yet have the secret signing key. And then remote attestation is performed using existing mechanisms, unmodified. And then the attestation results presented to the store. The store, key store responds by making the wrapped signing key available to the replicant's trust execution environment. And from that point on, every replicant does this. Every replicant ends up with the same credential and exact same key. All right. So I'm almost at the end of the presentation. So this is what we need. We need some of your reviews, we need comments, we need critiques, we need suggestions for improvement, whatever it is. I'm not averse to wholesale replacement. It's the goal we're after, not the, what the intermediate steps are. So please take a hard look at it. We need to submit a draft of a proposal, this proposal or a related proposal, to the Vienna ATF. The deadline is July 6th, so we have just over 2 months. We need support. We need support from a number of constituents such that would attend the RATS meeting at the ATF and say, yes, this looks like something that RATS should take on. Again, without the support, even the best idea will die. Ideally, again, there are people in the room from Google, from Microsoft, from hyperscalers, from solution vendors. We need help with reference implementations. Inside JP Morgan Chase, we're probably going to do a prototype, but it really is best that customers such as ourselves could deploy confidential computing with trustworthy workload identity in any cloud. We operate in multiple clouds. So interoperability is really what we're after. So you don't have to do something entirely bespoke everywhere you go. That is certainly the case today. So interoperability across hyperscalers, across key stores. Microsoft has its own attestation service and its own key store. Google has its own, etc. There is not really a good convergence story today. Credential authorities, right? They all have little sort of protocol shims that they require to get it all done. Certainly solution providers, again, take a look. Can we all converge on something like this? That's it. That's the discussion. Happy to, I can stop sharing now and we can go to this next phase. So thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate the great presentation. That was really interesting. I heard a couple of asks in there. One is an ask for a review of the document, and the other was an ask to actually do work to provide reference implementations. And I'm assuming that when you say reference implementations, you're saying using the swim lane diagrams that you propose there to actually build an application that uses the cloud service providers' inherent attestation providers, that uses the inherent key store mechanisms.
So what I mean by reference implementations, I basically mean the middleware. So say we're deploying a container in Azure, or we're deploying a container in GCP, right? Ideally, it's the same code, right? If it's the same application or say some similar process, right? It needs to go do some things to acquire a credential, or the workloader needs to do some things to provision a credential, maybe integrate with the CI/CD pipeline to predict the reference, values. The remote attestation results. Right? It's the stuff that we would not want to have to re-implement every time, right? So your application may be doing a myriad things, but it uses the MTLS library. That's what I'm talking about. That some sort of middleware that's unified that abstracts away each hyperscalers, for instance, protocols and mechanisms such that we don't have to do something completely different every time we need to deploy in a new environment.
I'm trying to follow, but I think, well, let me say this. I know you've been dealing with the attestation SIG, and I know that I have colleagues, other Azure friends that participate a lot in the attestation SIG. Here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure out how I can help you get eyes on your document and how I can help you get hands on keyboards to provide reference implementations, because I think this is an interesting proposal. But I don't know who you've already reached out to within my organization. I'm, Microsoft,
Oh, well,
obviously.
of course, I have contacts inside organizations. So, I had an email exchange with Greg Costal.
Okay, yep.
I sometimes get Vikas from Microsoft on the horn just to talk about things. But what you can do, being inside Microsoft, is really find out who are the best people. Look, the first part is review. Take a look. Does it even make sense? Right? I mean, we've done it in our SIG. We have good people who understand the problem space, but we need folks who can potentially have hands and keyboards. So I see Rene Koga from Google is there. Does this look reasonable to you, or are we completely off base? Right? I mean, again, not married to anything here. Hank, I'll just get to just in a second. But that's the first part. Take a look. Does this make sense? Are we barking up the right tree? After that, we need support in the ITF because ITF only happens once every 4 months. So we need to be on the sort of metronome there, or else we lose time. And implementation actually is not required by ATF, not immediately. That's what Hank told me the other day. So we just, in that order, review, support, implementation. Until then, it's just words on paper. Okay, I'm yielding. Yeah, Hank.
Yeah, hi. In too many meetings, I preface happening in parallel. I want to, of course, I'm in full support of what Mark said. I want to add, if you look at Microsoft, for example, and Edek, you were asking, there's this Microsoft CCF part that also has a lot of Microsoft corporate research backing it. I'm thinking Sylvan, Cedric, etc. Maybe that's also a lane we could go into. I'm not entirely sure. I think that's more of your expertise. Who would be best in which phase to provide feedback here? But maybe this is has to align with the CCF. I think that's my hint. I wanna leave. Sorry for interjecting.
So I can get in touch with Cedric, Hank. Let me stay off mute here. I just want to engage you very briefly in a conversation. I
Okay.
think the way I heard your words is that you believe that the identity measurement that Mark was alluding to, and I only briefly read his presentation, but I think we've got an identity measurement of some sort for these replicated workloads. You're saying that identity reference needs to be stored in some ledger like the CCF in order to be useful, so we have to pull that in?
That could how it ends up, right? So because they are so ephemeral sometimes, that in the end the whole procedure is only conducted after the the workload might have ceased to exist. Because it's like this swarm of things that suddenly spawn at scale and then disappear again. I think the word of the month is ephemeral for this right now. And so some of this might be interesting to retain in order to complete all the tasks that maybe take some time, maybe even longer than the whole swarm exists. So that is one part of the aspect, of course. But then there is we have trust domain here, right? So the cool feature about the confidential payload is that you can't measure it from the platform, and the problem is that now you have to enlighten the workload. And thereby, and this is a problem sometimes, provided with not open source yet code that is the paravisor, for example. I think it's going to be open source or is already open source, but it's enlightening the workload. And kind of, this is kind of like counterproductive to the core idea that you're not messing with your tenant. So this is an important aspect also. So we might have the tenant to initiate some of this dance to get a trustworthy workload identity done in composition, right? Because the platform can't initiate it. It needs a standard interface, and then again, the standard interface of the CC is kind of messing with the tenant, and so there's a lot of CCF-ish problems here. I think that could be a solution to part of this problem. I don't know. That is what I'm asking, right? So maybe just food for thought. Not necessarily immediate feedback, but it should be on the radar, a blip on the radar to take this into account, I think.
Okay, so I'm trying to capture to-dos here, not just for myself, but for other CSPs who might be interested in this. So I'll get back to my list of to-dos. I captured one to-do from you, pardon, to maybe get Cedric or other folks from the CCF to review this document, but we need to pull in folks from maybe other CSPs to lean in on this. And Mark, I think you're going to have to kind of scare up a list of volunteers to pull into this if we're going to try and get it across. So I'll put a pin in that and go to Dan.
Yeah, so thanks for doing all this work. I was trying to speed read some of the whimsy materials before the meeting. And so it looks like the whimsy identifier itself is a plain text URI subject field of a token. And I'm wondering,
whimsy is sort of a close relative of spiffy, and they don't want to say that. So for instance, in an early version of our doc, we had an SVID, so which is spiffy ID, and Peter Castleman from Whimsy basically said, just look, this is not a whimsy term. Whimsy is actually fairly ambivalent about what identity is or what format it is. It seeks to be very broad, but it has this concept of an identity. So it's either a subject name in the Windows identity token, or it is a subject name in an X509 search. So a string, but it doesn't say what goes in the string. That's left to wisely, correctly left to the implementer.
okay, sure. And I guess maybe in that same sense of whether it's an SVID or a whimsy identifier, there's not a whole lot from a security perspective that the workload has to do to get that. But over in the confidential computing area, we have a lot more that we do to assure the identity of the workload. And then we get a less secure representation of it through whimsy or spiffy. And I'm wondering if there's something that could be added to this proposal that would affect the whimsy identifier, so there's like some sort of assurance.
So you have to be very, very careful here because it's the gradual deployment that you are after. Gradual deployment means I have a payroll app that is running in Germany. And it used to be a legacy app, and its clients and servers dependent basically expect that. They simply want to know that it's a payroll app running in Germany that is sort of the latest approved version, and know nothing else. They don't care. They actually do not want to know. The relying parties are really, really dumb and really, really conservative. They don't want to like change. So the goal a very, very key deployment goal is I can turn on the checkbox saying this now runs in a confidential environment. And from this point of the workload, there may be some changes, but from the point of view of its clients and servers, exactly zero, not 0.01%, zero change. So if you start putting more stuff into the token, you're breaking your relying party.
Okay, I can understand that perspective.
And additional assurance is actually that's the juice northward thing, the squeeze. It's actually hurting you.
Sorry, say that again.
Additional assurance that you referred to is actually hurting you. It's not helping you to deploy. That's a very, very key realization. Again, I don't want to criticize too harshly, but the IETF and also a lot of what the consortium does is really not looking at it from your customer perspective, deploying the stuff. And I very much care about security and that we don't leave security holes around. But I can tell you that deployability and manageability of it, being able to insert a new confidential workload and not have to chase the organizational partners in the organization saying, oh, we're now doing this thing and put it on your schedule to deal with us, is immediately your target market shrinks by like 90%. So you have to be very, very careful not to upset the apple cart.
Okay. Go ahead, Hank.
Thanks. Yeah, so I to some extent I agree with Mark here. So he was calling this relying party empathy. No?
Yes.
It should not care that it's now a confidential compute node. It just should be fine because policy is fine and the policy has changed and that's fine. So that's a binary decision almost on the one hand. But on the other hand, a WIT is a web token. And a web token can be an EAT. And an EAT is the output of a remote attestation procedure. It can be attestation result. So there is already, I want to say, format synergy. And yeah, you don't have to put all the appraiser of evidence results into the attestation result. Actually, it is sometimes fine to understand this is your current company's policy, and this is fine. But still, there's synergy on at least on the token level. I think the Whimsy the CRED stuff in the document has two items. It has a WIT, a Whimsy identity token, which is basically a web token like the EAT. So that is relatively simple. And then there is the Whimsy identity credential. And I think that's an X549 certificate. And also for that, we have a way today to put, and I think somebody talked about here, to put evidence in a CSR in order to get only a certificate issued if you can show some health, some trustworthiness, right? So that is maybe also an interaction between the workload and the platform that could happen on the X509 level. So we have building blocks like the synergy in web token structure, or maybe the already in working group last call work where we have evidence in the CSR. So and reusing that building blocks, I think along the way makes sense. We are not entirely sure if that is enough. And of course, the diagram that Mark showed, there are some gaps here. There's an uncanny valley in the mid. So this is my last comment for today. We also have to do the other thing. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. And so let me kind of try and draw this discussion to a close. Mark, here's what I'm trying to do. I'm fearing that unless we get a show of hands for people that are willing to take on the responsibility of conducting the review and taking the discussion down to the next level to the individual CSPs to, I don't know, when you said reference implementation, if what you mean is just a box diagram that shows how we would use our individual products in each of our respective clouds to implement something that does this?
So, okay, my immediate goals, and I know you'll give it a couple more minutes. This is all I want. I would like someone from Microsoft, someone from Google, or if anybody other hyperscaler here, IBM, Oracle, I don't know who else is on the call. Just read our charter requirements and definitions first, so you at least understand what problems we're solving, and like it would be bad assumption to assume that we're solving something that we're not. So based on the thing that we're trying to accomplish, Just do a review of the proposal and see if you have major issues with it. Otherwise, please give us support. That's it. Support doesn't mean anything. Then, somebody from your company will stand up at ATF and say, this is worth pursuing. And if not, tell us why not. Again, both results are fine. The worst option is no result at all, right? So, and then after we get the support decision, reference implementation can wait until later in the summer, later in the year. We'll figure out what that means after people actually review the proposal and digest it.
Got it. So step one, let's get some folks to actually review the proposal
Review
and get it
and
to final stage.
tell us if you can support it. If you can support it, fantastic. Then we've done something right. If we got it wrong, also tell us.
So what I see my view as the TAC voting member for Microsoft is to get this into the hands of people who have the qualifications to actually do the review. In my case, I've heard Cedric, I've heard Greg. You say you've already had conversations with Greg. Is he supportive?
Not specifically on this, right? I mean, the conversations that took place were inside the SIG, and whoever attends the SIG meetings, which unfortunately it doesn't include these folks, they choose not to show up, but maybe now they will. Right? But that's what we want. We want the most important constituency for us as hyperscalers, because our VMs run in clouds, our lambdas fire in clouds, our notification queues and everything else, and the load balancers and all the workloads, they run in these clouds. And this does not really work if you can only do it in like small number of cases.
Got it. Okay. I'll take responsibility for Microsoft to get this into the right hands and ask them to lean in and do the review. Does anybody from another hyperscaler want to come off mute and kind of accept responsibility for at least reviewing this and trying to get it into the hands of the subject matter experts?
Yeah, I'll shepherd it around at Google.
Thank you, Renee. So that's 2 hyperscalers. Do we have any other volunteers? Okay. So Mark, you've got 2. I'll start an email thread to go around to kind of get a conversation going at Microsoft. Renee, I'll expect you to do the same for Google, and we will leave it to you, Mark, to try and drum up support with the other hyperscalers.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right, cool. Well, again, thank you for a wonderful presentation and for a super interesting topic. I myself will read the presentation more thoroughly after this, and we'll move on.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, cool. Let's see. Next step on the agenda is the review of the Grameen project. I'm not sure, Kaylin, if you were going to lead the review or who it was going to fall on.
Actually, I will present and together with Mona, but I don't see Mona coming, so I'll probably cover her part. Anyway,
Right.
let's get started.
Cool. Do you want to share the screen?
Yeah, sure. I'll start my video first and start my presentation. Can you guys see my slides?
Not yet. I do see your video.
Okay, cool. Let me share it. Can you see my slides now?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet? Oh,
It's probably
wait a
too.
moment.
There we
There we
go.
go.
Now it's coming.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Now we can see it.
Okay, let's get started. So, hello everyone. I'm Kai Qing. I'm from Intel. I'm one of the Grameen maintainers. And today I will be presenting, along with Mona, on Grameen, a project which focused on the securing on modified Linux applications with confidential computing. And we also have Don from UNC Chapel Hill here, who is also a Grameen maintainer. So Don, please jump in if you have anything to add during our presentation. So let me quickly outline how we will divide our today's presentation. I will be covering the first part of the presentation, including our recent progress, core changes, and our recent work on Grameen TDX. Then I'll hand things over to Mona, but since I don't see her coming, So I'll try my best to cover her part, where we will discuss our strategic path forward and the challenges as well as the opportunities we are currently facing. So let me start with an overview of what Grameen is. Grameen is actually a multi-process library OS and enables users to run unmodified Linux applications on SGX. As you can see on the right, Grameen now supports a diverse set of applications which can be built on top of different frameworks or written in varied languages. So Grameen is a community-maintained open source project currently hosted on GitHub. We are under LGPL license. And please note that we do have some other repositories, such as examples and tooling, which are under a more permissive license, which is BSD 3+. We've joined the CCC in September 2021, and we achieved graduation status in May 2023. We provide several essential tools for SGX solutions. For example, for containerization, we currently provide Grameen shielded containers and Grameen scaffolding. And we also provide some helper libraries for attestation-related capabilities. For example, we provide ITLS libraries and secret provisioning libraries. Our latest production-ready version is 1.9, which was released in June last year. The whole project is currently under active development. Grameen has gained traction in both industry and academia. And in the industry side, we list some of our top customers here. We do have IBM, Agilysys, and JD Cloud and Tencent Cloud, who have deployed Grameen in their real-world scenarios. For example, we have IBM, who uses Grameen for their e-prescription services. Grameen is also used as the solution for PPML, secure inference, and a bunch of blockchain-related products. So before I walk you through our detailed progress, let me highlight some key recent achievements in Grameen. So first, we successfully released Grameen version 1.9 in June last year, and which represents our latest production-ready version. We've also made some progress on Grameen TDX productization, where we rebase it to the latest Grameen master and added CI support. Additionally, we've started a sub-project of Grameen TDX, where we developed a new experimental CoVM deployment model, which I will introduce a little bit more later. So let me first quickly recap Grameen's evolution from research to production. The Grameen project started as a research prototype at Stony Brook University, led by Dong's team. The development started in 2011, around 15 years ago, and the very first open source version of Grameen was published in 2014. And most recently, we won the Cybersecurity Artifacts Impact Award at XSAC in December 2024. And since last year, due to the resource constraints, we cannot keep the quarterly release cadence, but we still try to make our release regular to include key fixes and enhancements. Now we've been shifting some of our focus to explore more on the confidential VM side, such as productizing Grameen TDX and proposing new deployment models. Now let's have a quick revisit on the technical architecture of Grameen. Grameen is a mature confidential project with over 9 years of active development. As you can see from the picture, it features a modular design and securely offloads its I/O functionalities to the host system. In the SGX enclave, we have the unmodified application running on top of our library OS, which will eventually interact with the network and file system stack on the host through what we call it a Grameen backend. We also call it as a platform adaptation layer, or simply PAL. Nowadays, we have 4 backends supported: the Linux backend, the SGX backend, and the VM backend, and the TDX backend. And Grameen is also shipped with a manifest file, which configures and seals the security posture of the bundle of the workload as well as the whole OS. So with this design, we allow applications to run without modification while preserving strong security guarantees by leveraging different TE technologies. So since our last update in April 2025, we've made several progress. We now have our Grameen version 1.9, which is our latest version, and packaged for popular Linux distros, including the Debian and the Red Hat families of distros. We also have shipped official Grameen Docker image, which we try to facilitate the deployment and development for our end users. The project remains active development with continued code enhancements, bug fixes, and documentation improvements. We also maintain a relatively active community with over 100 open issues and 50 pull requests in the programming repository as of today. We also spent effort in tagging our issues to tag them with actually different priorities so that we can handle them differently to make us run with more efficiency with resource constraints. We've also tried to add some new features where we have several PRs under review. On the one side, we try to add some SGX hardware features, including AEX Notify. We also had this key separation and sharing, also known as KSS feature, contributed by one of our users, a company. And actually, a company has deployed Grameen SGX with KSS feature in their commercial confidential serverless platforms. We also have this TCB migration for encrypted files contributed by UIUC, one of our academic partners. On the other side, for the software enhancements, they're mostly driven by new use cases. So we have added the new features like syscalls, including timer FD. We have read-write logs for VMA trees and page cache for trusted files. And while our development on programming has been focused with clear priorities, we consider customers and security as our top dual priorities, followed by general fixes and improvements. And starting from our highest priorities, customer needs and security, we've made several improvements. For example, for our customers, we've added file recovery support for encrypted files. We've implemented new syscall semantics emulation to directly address the customer's asks. And on the security side, we've updated our depending libraries to newer versions so that we can keep up with the latest security fixes. And following these top priorities, we've addressed general fixes and improvements. For example, we've improved performance of our memory manager. We've fixed this limit inheritance problem to better support a multiprocessing use case. And we've made changes to the NUMA-related subsystems to support newer hardwares. Lastly, we dropped support for legacy drivers and deprecated attestation schemes. We also dropped the support for older hardware. This allows us to streamline our code base as well as reducing our maintenance burdens.
Hey, Kalen, let me interrupt here between slides
Yeah.
just to make you aware. Mona just joined.
Yeah.
So
Okay, great.
happy to report that. Didn't know if that's gonna change
Okay.
your approach.
Yeah, right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Now while we continue to maintain our programming SGX offering, we've also been making strides in expanding our capabilities beyond SGX. So let me now turn to our work on Grameen TDX. Here we repurpose Grameen for confidential VMs, where we try to close a missing but crucial gap, where we consider that most of the CVMs today all default to full Linux distros, where we instead intend to build an OS kernel for confidential VMs with minimal TCP and attack surface. So we've written our TDX backend from scratch under a manageable code size. And we try to reuse over 70% of our existing and beta-tested Grameen code base. The implementation includes a minimal set of only 3 drivers, where we have VirtIO vsock for network, we have VirtIO FS for files, and VirtIO console for debug-only purposes. We've also used TTShim as a virtual BIOS to minimize our startup latency. This work was published at CCS 2024, and we've published our code on our GitHub repository. So for Grameen TDX progress, since last year, we began thinking about productizing it and try to add some must-have features for this purpose. Specifically, we've tried to rebase Grameen TDX to the latest Grameen master branch, and we've added CI pipelines and regression support, which we believe are the gatekeepers to maintain the high qualities of our check-ins. Regionally, Grameen TDX is launched from the bare metal host, just like a normal application. This works out of box, but when discussing this deployment model with some potential CSP customers, we find that it faces several challenges from both security, isolation, and infrastructure side. So we've developed a Grameen TDX co-VM deployment model, providing a lightweight TD option so that our CSP customers can launch Grameen TDX not only from the bare metal host, but also from a collocated parent VM or TD in the cloud. And further, as part of our ongoing formal verification efforts, we've implemented several security enhancements, including enforcing regex or execute permissions for PAL segments. Now that I've covered our progress and the recent development, I'd like to hand things over to Mona. So I think, Mona, you're there, right?
Yes. Sorry
thanks,
for
Mona.
joining late. Yeah, so I guess Kylun has gone through the status so far. So Grameen SGX now mostly is in maintenance mode. We still have several people using it, but we haven't seen as much growth. We haven't seen new customers coming to us. And even if they are, we are just not aware of it. Some of them have constantly asked for new feature requests or maybe bug fixes. So we sort of are trying to handle it as they come, but we are not really actively adding new features. So I think for Grameen SGX, the last release was last summer, and we haven't, other than just customer requests and constant tooling and documentation, there's always some improvement, but it's very, very customer focused. But Grameen TDX that Kylun just went through is our growth path. Someone even just asked, right, in fact, a lot of people asked us if Grameen project is dead, because if not that many people are adding new features to SGX, what are you going to do? I actually maintain it, and I think with quite a few other people in industry, while we have so much focus on CVMs and everybody is pushing forward towards deploying it, they are just slightly better than VMs and TXT secure boot that we had. We are putting the whole Linux in there. But regardless, it's really hard to convince most of the, I guess, decision makers that you need something like Grameen TDX. So we will continue to do what we did with Grameen SGX. No one believed we needed Grameen SGX, so we built it. We're building Grameen TDX. And now we have a POC, and we are actually trying to make it more production ready. The big problem, like Kylun said, was in cloud, you can't really use the host. So we had this co-VM idea, and that's actually not a new idea. AWS Nitro enclaves exactly do that. They launch the enclaves from a VM, and we can do that so as well. And yes, there are performance issues, but most of these things that are running in these VMs, think AI models or whatever, they don't really go out that much. They're mostly doing compute and then send the results back. Anyway, and then of course we want to just add the container support. So Grameen TDX is our growth path. That's where we're spending most of our energy. Go on, Kylo, next slide. But we have a lot of challenges with our project. We have worked on it for several years, but biggest issue was that Intel has significantly reduced their funding. Intel was investing in a big way on Grameen. Now we just have, I guess, just a very little part of Kylun's time as a maintainer. That's probably the only support left. And then we had support from we have a couple of professors with the NSF funding. So they are, but it's not that Intel dropped the funding and we are done. So we still have other opportunities. So NSF funding, which has been going on this is our third year. So that's the main source of funding right now. We also keep getting requests. Like I was saying earlier, more of it is still coming on Grameen SGX, not so much on Grameen TDX. And there are industrial and some other there's a lot of academic partners who are interested in Grameen TDX. So hopefully we grow it that way. And like I already said earlier, I really think this is a niche that is being, there's little work in the industry. So other than Grameen TDX, we have Project Oak from Google, which is aiming to do the same thing. And now most recently, there's Lightbox from Microsoft as well. Interestingly, the Project Oak guys told me, hey, because they don't have POSIX compliance, they have their own custom interface, so it's really hard to use. We have POSIX compliance. We would use Grameen TDX today if it was written in Rust. And we are not written in Rust, we are written in C. And that's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, to convert our core, at least libOS or PAL code from C to Linux, C to Rust. So, well, we will probably look at if LLMs can do that job for us because we don't have that much manpower. But I still think our project is significantly strapped for resources. So if this community actually cares about the project or the goal that we are after, so all the member companies, if there's anyone who would like to support the community, that'll be great. I think we can go to the next slide. Yes, just to sort of cite the impact, a lot of it is from Grameen SGX. We have shown this slide before. It's very, very popular in academic community and in the 800, but the interesting thing is this 800 plus citation, almost 50 are on Grameen TDX because a lot of the new academic work is on TDX and many of them are actually looking at how they can use small TCB and then expand beyond it. So yeah, I guess and then there's the other stats over here from the academia. But of course, academia is also shifting from SGX to TDX. Go on to the next one. This is again the set of customers that were using Grameen SGX. We have not received, some of them showed interest in Grameen TDX, but I think for one, it is not quite ready yet. This is exactly the same problem I had when we started with Grameen SGX. Everybody said, oh, we can't really use it. It doesn't do this, it doesn't do that. And then no one would invest in it, right? It's the same thing now. No, it doesn't really work, but unless you invest, it takes time to build things like this. So I'm hoping if we go through this slump phase, build something, we will emerge better on the other side, but we will see. And then one second, I think some of them may be moving to CVMs, but my impression is many of them are still continuing to deploy. For example, at least this IBM e-prescription, the one which is the biggest production deployment, is still using SGX. All right, Kailun. Okay, so here we don't have any change in our technical charter or any of that. I think Grameen TDX project still is under the Grameen umbrella. It's not merged into the core Grameen, even though, like Kailun showed, it's exactly the same libOS. We just have a new PAL. Because even we had to even convince the maintainers to bring it to a certain quality before we'll merge it into the main branch. Otherwise, nothing really changes. Our website is still under development. And again, as Kailun mentioned, I think we have it ahead. Go ahead, Kailun. I think this is fine. Yes, so we still have a very healthy maintainer team, but many of them have gone. So as you see, at least 3 of them are from Invisible Things Labs. And because the Intel part went away, while they're available to sort of review some small pull requests and such, they are not able to invest much time on it unless they're supported by somebody. So they are off to doing other projects. And we have the couple of professors who are working under an SF umbrella, so they have some time on the project. And then we have Kailun and we have me. And I'm also not at Intel anymore. We have to fix that. So I'm just, yeah. So I'm sort of committed to making sure the project succeeds. Yeah. And then budget-wise, thanks to CCC for the upgrading the hardware. We've been upgrading actually our CI hardware. We had really old Nooks and all that from several years ago that Intel donated. But thanks to CCC, we have the newer servers now. I think in 24 also we got a new server and hoping to get one more. I think this year if we get one more, we'll be on the latest. We would have sort of gotten rid of all of our old hardware. Website, CCC helped us fund it, but I think there's still some work left on our side to get it up and running. And then there's a VPS server for packages that's also paid by the Linux Foundation. Yeah. Go on, Kailun. Yeah, I think it's just the same. Nothing has changed on that. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Kaylin and Mona. That was a wonderful presentation. I want to open the floor up to see if other folks have questions or just want to make comments and give space here. But I've got a few questions. I'll go at the end. So I want to encourage other folks to come off mute and give us responses. I'm really curious to know how people are thinking about SGX these days. Yeah, please go ahead, Ijala.
Yes, thank you both for the presentation. In the spirit of finding new use cases for the project, during OC3 this year, there was a presentation by Jürgen, the maintainer of SVSM Coconut, and one of their future ambitions potentially is to move beyond SVSM being just a paravisor and into potentially being the kernel that runs on top of it, generic or general purpose applications. And it was rightfully called out that there might be synergies between this potential direction of SVSM and the Grameen project. And obviously that might be in the spirit of the future TDX ambitions of Grameen. So I haven't thought about this very much, but it's made sense when I heard it, and I wanted to relay the feedback in case there is room for synergies between these two projects.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I am aware of this initiative. And actually, I left some comments in the Coconut SVSM community chat, Gitter chat, to ask their plan and current whatever the progress of it. But I haven't received any feedback yet. But I guess I will potentially I will look into this area anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, I'll go ahead. These might be sort of newbie questions here, but I'll ask anyway. So I'm looking from the perspective of my own employer, Microsoft, and how we're trying to transition into the later generations of Intel processors that, support TDX, Granite Rapids, Diamond Rapids, and forward, and moving to TDX using confidential VMs. And I'm wondering if this port that you folks are discussing during this update of having Grameen run in TDX will work with something as simple as a TDX confidential VM in a cloud service provider, or if we're going to have to do more work, if you folks are going to have to interface with OpenVMM, for example, the Azure Paravisor, which is now open source, to support Grameen in within as a nested enclave within a confidential VM. I don't even know if this makes sense. I just was wanting to get you folks to come on and to maybe educate me a little bit.
So I'll jump in. First of all, even on, I know you're not running the Linux directly, right? You're running a paravisor inside a confidential VM, and then we actually have a slightly different. We need support from CSPs to add yet another, call it another driver in your VMM. Or so this is why I know AWS is not here, but this is what Nitro. That's why ours is not suitable for cloud providers. What we are doing is we are not running Linux inside the CVM. Okay, we are just running this little Grameen OS, and we rely on another Linux, think host, say in a bare metal case. If we need networking stack, if we need file system, a lot of it we rely on the host because we are doing very little in this. Our TCP is really small. So what Nitro did was, and in cloud, you will never give us access to nobody can give access to the host. So instead, there'll be a co-VM. So I have a parent, call it a parent VM. So I want to be able to go back and forth between CVM and the parent VM. If you think Kata Containers does that too. Kata Containers also has this, what they call it, they have a different name for it. But they are still running full Linux in it. So we will need not only, Microsoft will have to think Nitro driver. You will need a new driver that can connect the two parent and a child VM. That's something we think it's not unheard of. AWS is already doing. Microsoft, I've talked to a few people. I've talked to Vikas in the past, and he's expressed interest, but we still didn't have this thing working, and now we have it working. And in fact, Alec, it'll be good if you can connect us with someone at Microsoft we can bring requirements, what needs to be done. And Kylon, if you want to add more, that's fine too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Mona, you're talking about the peer poll in Kata, right?
Yep. Mhm.
Because
Because I think Alec is asking, can we run unmodified in their CVMs? And we can't. We need the support from the VMM.
So I just don't know. I know that OpenVMM has just been released as an open source project. And so the hypervisor that we inject into these TDX VMs is now an open source project. And I'm wondering if this driver that you're saying you need would fit inside of that OpenVMM paravisor, or if it needs to go lower still.
Oh, it can be so that OpenVMM runs on top of Linux. Is there another Linux in that CVM?
Nope.
Right?
So
the paravisor?
The paravisor runs underneath the CVM. Inside the CVM is where you would be running a Linux kernel. And then within the Linux, well, I'll say this, the OpenVMM paravisor is running within a Linux kernel, but it is underneath the
Yep.
Linux that is in the VM.
Yeah, so the paravisor can add that support. I know. I mean, I think if you're using a paravisor, then I think it can add that. We should be able to run unmodified in that case because it already has a hosting Linux in there. Yeah.
So that's kind of what I was thinking, and I was thinking that was one of the ideas behind OpenVMM was to allow people to add layers in between the actual hardware and the VM that runs on top.
Yeah, then you don't need Grameen TDX because if you think, then what you're doing is then you're just running a normal Linux in there. We can run Grameen, what we call it, Grameen native on top of it. But we can bring this discussion because think about what Grameen TDX does. It actually creates a whole TD and throws it. It's at the bottom. But what you have given us, you're saying if I give you an open VMM or TD already, then you can run whatever on top of it. Then we can run Grameen. We call it Grameen Linux on it. So we have Grameen SGX, we have Grameen Linux, we have Grameen TDX. We don't need all this TDs things that we are doing. But problem in the model that you have, Alec, and this is a question I want to ask at the end, but let's wrap this up and then I'll see this whole CVMs are going in my mind in the wrong direction. We are not only putting Linux, we are putting paravisors and more stuff in there. Your TCP is bloating like crazy. And and I actually really question the security offered by such large TCPs. And how are you even any better than Linux with TXT? Where you can do secure. Yeah, you can do a little bit more runtime attestation. That's it. So I think this group actually should think about doing lightweight TDs and support some of the projects and actually think of, or at least have a position on it. Maybe we shouldn't be the only ones having a position. I want to hear CCC's position on the lightweight TDs.
That's a great topic of conversation. Maybe what we can do, Mona, is take this offline and I can start a conversation with the OpenVMM folks and maybe bring both to the TAC and we can have a discussion there specifically on Grameen. One of the struggles, we're having a combination, speaking from the perspective of a CSP, we're having a combination of struggles, and that is some customers, Signal famously, very much likes SGX. There are other customers who very much like SGX, and they share your concerns of having a TCP that expands all the way to contain an OS. They don't like that for the reasons that you've cited. The problem is that the SGX product by itself hasn't had the kind of adoption that we'd need to maintain that going forward from a commercial perspective. So what we're trying to do is figure out a way to have a TDX product that supports both the VM model and the enclave model so that customers can choose.
You nailed it. This is exactly where we are going. This is exactly what that is. That's for a long look. Let me just say this. Now I'm not even at Intel. I can say this. I really still believe SGX has its own place and it should have grown. It's unfortunate that we are not seeing as much adoption. But by offering something like Grameen TDX, we are actually offering an alternate to using a different hardware technology. But because it's just software, right? it's actually call it an enclave or a VM or whatever, but it's really what you put inside it. And we are putting more or less the same thing, whether it's Ramin SGX or TDX. So we can definitely, in fact, that's what I'm saying. I think it's CCC has to have a position in it or even a discussion. So we are so it's not a dead end. Like I talk to people and then no one really listens and then it just ends, right? And I know these problems exist, the problems that you just mentioned. So we could have a discussion with Signal as well and see if this will meet the requirements. It needs more work, but if there is a potential customer, I'm sure we can do the work, right?
Fantastic. Cool. I have no further questions. Does anybody else want to ask more questions of the Grameen project maintainers? Okay, well then thank you so much for the awesome
Thank you.
update and for the explanation.
Thank you.
And I will.
Nice to see all three of you here supporting the project.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, nice to see you
Oh,
too.
Don is here as well. Yeah, yeah, nice to see you as well. Yeah, so
Okay, so the next topic on the agenda is an update on ISO participation. So for the TAC, and I'm going to go from memory a little bit here because I'm not sure how much of an update I've given the TAC. I know I gave an update to the governing board. Um, we we within the TAC, we understood that we need to reach out to regulators and standards bodies to get more widespread CCC adoption if we're going to have any hope of spreading CCC. We all know that security costs money, and for most customers, they don't necessarily see a need to adopt a new security paradigm until it's required by regulators or until it's gotten the adoption of a standards body that proves it's real. So the CCC has been reaching out to various regulators and various standards bodies, NIST, and I know Michael joined a couple of times, and I've been in touch with him, Michael Bartok. We're trying to co-author a paper with NIST to get them to help customers understand the value of confidential computing. We're working with regulators such as the Cloud Security Alliance to help customers understand that they should protect workloads using confidential computings. And we're also reaching out to the International Standards Organization to kind of help them adopt standards that are aligned with the white papers and the definitions that are promoted by the Confidential Computing Consortium. So we reached out to the International Standards Organization. They have a very structured process for accepting input from groups. You have to be, for example, representative of a nation in order to in order to provide input to the subcommittees and the working groups, or you have to have a formal relationship as a liaison with the working group. So the CCC went through the process of creating a liaison relationship with the ISO, and we were successful in doing that. And so Working Group 4, that is convened by FAUD, has agreed to accept the CCC as a liaison, and I'm the representative of that sort of liaisonship for now. That is allowed me to participate in the ISO working group meetings, and so I was able to participate in the meeting in Germany where we reviewed the draft of the ISO CCC terminology standards paper. That paper hasn't been published yet. It's in the final review process, but it's slated to be published here pretty soon. So that's really good news. The other good news is there were some important differences, especially around attestation, between the ISO definition and the definitions that we have in our white papers at the CCC. We were able to get aligned on those definitions. And in my opinion, as the liaison, I believe we have 100% alignment between the ISO definition of confidential computing and the CCC's definition of confidential computing. So when this publication is when this standards document is published, I think everybody will agree that we're in really tight linked with the ISO. So the next step, the next publication that the ISO is proposing, which I'm going to share right now. I can't share a link to it because it is gated, but I can share this view. Please tell me Hopefully you can see that.
Yep.
Okay, so this diagram here, and I'll zoom in just a little bit. This diagram shows kind of a series of documents, standards that ISO is considering for confidential computing. This is the one that's in final review and is going to be published pretty soon. And it's just an overview, concepts, and kind of a terminology document. ISO 25093. We're moving on now to ISO 25546, which is in the very early stages. Architecture requirements, planning, and components and services. What I'm trying to do, and this was just published a few days ago, what I'm going to do as the liaison is to get feedback on this document from the TAC. So I'm going to page down. They're talking about, at first it was going to be envisioned as a 3-part series, but given how long it was taking to finally get committed and publish part 1, we're thinking now that it makes more sense to combine parts 2 and 3 so that we only have to go through that effort one time and combine the architecture and requirements and components and services into a single document called Technical Framework and Services. Here are the chapter headings that we're going to be discussing. What I'm trying to do at this point is find out from the editors of this document how to get the CCC's review of this doc into ISO consideration. Right now, I'm in the position of trying to get CCC input into the doc when only I have permission to view it, and that doesn't make sense. So I'm trying to hammer out a process whereby I can get excerpts from this document, put them into a shared location, and then get the TAC to add review comments, which I can then coalesce into the liaisons comments that go back into working group 4. ISO is a highly structured organization, and so getting permission to do just that is taking a little bit of effort. So I'm working through that process. What I can
And do you
share
feel
right.
like you know you're connected to the right people that can answer that?
Yes, well, I've got the convener for SC27, for Subcommittee 27, and I've got the editor of the document themselves. So I think I'm talking to the right folks. I just need to figure out a procedure for doing it. So I'm
Okay.
not blocked, and I don't think I need any help from the Linux Foundation on this right now. I'm just trying to figure out an informal way to get to be able to share this document, and then I can do the work to gather input and put it through the proper channels. So at this point, I think all I can share is that we have an outline for the next document that's going to be published as an ISO standard for confidential computing that's going to be pretty thorough, as hopefully you folks can see. There's definitions of all the things that we know and love in the CCC: hardware root of trust, attestation, remote attestation, key derivation, and plus a lot of other good stuff that we've been talking about here recently. Composite devices, secure channels, data sealing to take advantage of the latest processor technologies. So I think the list of topics is grown well beyond what we've already discussed in the Confidential Computing Consortium's white papers, and gives us a chance to kind of add to the body of work that describes it. Let me just take one quick look. I'm going to stop sharing for one sec. Well, no, I won't. I'm just going to page down. Yeah, actually, this is what I wanted to share. This section here. So again, I'm just going to pause here for a second and let folks kind of look at the list of concepts here and understand that this is going to be a pretty in-depth paper, and we're going to need to maybe set up a committee to provide a review. And Dan, as the chair, I'm kind of wondering from you if you think this is something that belongs within the TAC, or if it should be looked at by some of the other SIGs that we have. It's so technical in nature that I'm thinking it belongs in the TAC, but it does have to do with regulators, so it feels like it's straddling that line.
Yeah, it feels to me like it's a TAC topic. I think of the new regs and standards SIG as part of their job is figuring out how to go interact with other standards bodies and regulators, but not necessarily delivering the artifacts to those. So I wouldn't see a need to pull this out of the TAC and move it over.
Got it. Okay, well then I'll say that where we are right now is I'm in the process of trying to figure out how to present the information in this document to the TAC so that we can then ask for review comments and then add those review comments back to the working group's discussion for consideration. So let me pause there and see if anybody has any questions. Nope. Okay, well then I'm going to stop sharing. And unfortunately, the slide deck that I was looking at that had the list of new business seems to have been updated, and I don't see the slides that have new business. Benjamin has dropped off the discussion. So I think the two things that I remember from memory is to make sure that the next rotating chair is aware that they're going to be presenting in 2 weeks. And Dan, I'm struggling to remember who the new rotating chair was. I think I've got that here. Give me one sec. Was it Fritz? Yeah, I think it was Fritz.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So that's the new business that I have for us is to make sure that Fritz is aware that he's going to be presenting, and I don't see if he's still on the call. I'll take a quick look.
No, Fritz was sick today, so he asked to make sure that I would cover for him.
Cool.
So I'm dropping a link into chat, maybe. Yeah, there we go. Zoom wanted to fight with me, but all right. So this is a link. So we had kind of informally tracked agenda stuff on like a Google spreadsheets, but Ben has come up with some ways to automate some of this so that we can send out notifications. I know it was rough for Alec and everybody who came before Alec this year to get you ramped into stand-ups and stuff like that. So Ben has come up with some automation so people will get notified and invited to the stand-up meeting and so forth. But thank you for sharing, Alex. So we can see who's coming up next. It's Fritz. And then I reached out to Yash to see if he's back from leave and would like to do a meeting, but I'm guessing not. So just a heads up to Ijlal, the next ask will be to you to see if you want to take that that slot on May 14th. See the thumbs up there. So yeah, so you can also see from the list that we had the update on Gramming today, and it's Coconut next time, and we have to check in on Keystone thereafter. But that gives you kind of a long-term view of what we have coming. The other topics like working on the blueprints docs, we decided I asked Ben to keep those, we're going to keep those separate in the spreadsheet so that we can just iterate on them without having to do pull requests to update this thing. So these are the regularly scheduled, long-term scheduled topics, but we'll continue to do our more tactical things on a week-by-week basis.
Well, one other thing that I wanted to make a call out for that's coming back to mind is that the number of tech talks that we've got already scheduled is diminishing. So I wanted to put a call out to those who are still listening to please bring subjects forward for tech talks. I will volunteer to give a tech talk at the next meeting while Fritz is doing the Coconut SVSM review. I will talk about composite devices and how do we think about attestation for Ts that have composite devices. There's just not enough time left to go through that today, and we had a pretty deep meeting already, so I think we're good.
Yeah, so the other thing that we wanted to hit was to check in on the document status. I know I saw a lot of edits come through from Renee, so Renee had to drop, but thanks to him for continuing to be active in his document. And we still have Simon on. I haven't checked in on the B blueprint. I don't know if there's updates that you want to share with us today, Simon.
So I do not today. I'm hoping actually to tomorrow. Diary kind of looks like a bit more free time, so I shall try and have a crack at it.
Okay. So what we want to do across all these documents is get them sort of shipped, if possible, this month, and then get into the next set of documents starting in May, ideally. So if people could help out Simon and Renee and myself by getting your reviews into the docs, that would be great. We could bring up the 3 degrees document and maybe just talk through some of the updates that I made to that one. Though I don't see some of the people who had asked for those changes.
Do you want to take over and share that 3 degrees doc, Dan?
Sure. All right, so I gather people can see this.
Yes.
Let me see if this will make it more apparent. Okay, so this is just showing us a bit of a diff from what I updated from last time. So these were just little things, but the substantive thing was people didn't want to convey that if you hadn't integrated attestation that you were using confidential computing, or to state it affirmatively that you must integrate attestation before you claim to have adopted confidential computing. So I've added text in a couple places for that without trying to go overkill on it. So you can see the one sentence there. And then in the conclusion, some more wording here to say that pretty strictly that without attestation, it doesn't meet the definition of confidential computing. So I wonder if that addresses anybody's concerns with that in the past, if any of the folks who have that concern are on, or if you feel like you can proxy that viewpoint for somebody who's not here.
I was one of the people who raised concerns, and that definitely satisfied my concerns.
Okay, great. Anybody else?
Dan, is there a link to, where is this document? Sorry, I was in the...
Yeah, so I'll drop the link to chat, the link into chat. And then all of these are...
Okay, okay, got it.
All docs are
Governance, yeah,
listed
okay.
here. There's 3 other blueprints docs that you'll find in the issue.
Yeah. And then can you go back up? What does it say about the whatever the guarantees it this provides? Yeah, I guess. Yeah, but I mean, you had something on security or something. If you go down a little bit, level 1, you left. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so if you haven't looked through this before, the gist of
Oh,
this is that, people do the lift and shift, but that doesn't actually involve their
yeah.
security policies in a way that affects how reliant party systems interact. So we wanted to make clear that you have to go through some level of integration, and it might be that that integration is provided by an ISV or a CSP, but it's not just dropping a workload into a CVM.
Okay.
So let me get to a couple of the other changes, if there's anything else here. So I think it might have been you, Alec, asking that I use more RATS terminology instead of inventing terms. So I agreed with that, and I dropped that policy decision point thing and just referred to it as attestation evidence. I am trying to avoid getting to. I want to use as much as possible plain language so that people aren't forced to learn RATS.
That's fair, Dan. I just remember reading these documents for the first time when I joined not that long ago, and you folks were fluent enough in it that you would use equivalent terms, but it wasn't spelled the exact same way. And for someone who's new, reading the equivalent term, they're wondering what the difference is between 2 equivalent terms, not realizing that they're actually equivalent. So that's the only reason I raised that. I think you've done it. I'll take a closer look at the new wording. I'm sure it's good.
Okay, great. And then this was feedback that Renee had asked for, but he's not on right now. So I'll let people look at the rest of the changes offline. The one other thing that I thought I'd ask for today is there was also feedback on the diagrams that there's this sort of 2D representation, and then I went into 3D mode with some help from Gemini and Nano Banana. So if people can make better diagrams, I would love that. Me wrestling with PowerPoint or Nano Banana is not my favorite thing, even though those are both great tools. So I'd like to ask for help with the diagrams, or if nobody wants to help with the diagrams, these will be probably the final states unless I get some additional time before we want to pull the trigger on publishing.
I thought the diagrams were great.
Thank you. All right, questions or comments from anybody else on this document?
Do you want to set a deadline, Dan, for when comments are due by and say, speak now or forever hold your peace? I think maybe we're at that point already.
Yeah, I think that's good. So I'll send a note to the list so that people who aren't here will get it, but I'd like to finalize these at our next meeting. So we'll do like a last round of comments. Last round of comments over the next week to 2 weeks, I guess.
Sounds good. And then we'll publish version 1 of the doc, and there's always the possibility of releasing an update if folks think of something after the fact. Cool.
Yeah. What we've done in the past is once we're done doing this rapid drafting, then we can throw things into Markdown and throw them into version control. So yeah, then we can iterate on those approved docs in the future without needing to find links to these drafts.
Oof. Does Google Docs support a export Markdown that actually exports the GIFs to a different source and all of that?
There's a little bit of manual work, I think, but it's not too bad. I think so long as the other thing that we do is even in the format that this is in, when we hand it to Linux Foundation Creative Services to create the final PDF, they change the layout.
Got it. But they'll give us the markdown directory. So if we want to go back and, like you said, update the GIF file or whatever the actual Google Sheets or whatever you use to create this thing, we'll have the original source material to tweak the
Yeah, I think it's on
slides.
us to generate the markdown, but whatever format we give to LF Creative Services, they generate a nicer looking PDF and they'll mess with the layout.
Cool. Well, I just remember when we were trying to redo the terminology paper, the images were only stored in GIF format. So it was really hard to go back later and change some of the wording on there. If so, I'm hoping I can convince you or help you share the actual slides in their native format so that we can edit pieces of them.
Right. And I can do that for some of these, but like this one is generated. So it's for me, one of the challenges of AI in its current state is it gets you like 80, 90% there. But your ability to fix what it did for that last 10% is painful.
So you're going to take the prompt text and commit that in a pull request. Is that like that?
Right. Something like that.
All right. I'm sure the model will reproduce the same image if we give it the same prompt text in a year from now.
Right.
All right, cool. Well, I think that draws us to the end of this exciting iteration of the CCC TAC. Does anybody else have any questions? If not, I will remit 15 minutes of precious time back to everybody.
All right. Thanks for staying up late, Kylun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
See you.
Cheers.